All right, Devin, you want to go ahead and share your topic?
So I guess I just chose dating because that's the only one that I had like seen in the workplace. There wasn't much in the reading, unless I'm mistaken and didn't read something, but didn't seem to be much on dating in the reading. But I could imagine how much of a problem that could be. With my experience, I was the one in a relationship with someone that I worked with, and she was actually my boss. Um, and I could, it was in high school, and so I could see how that could have been a poor situation, and it was, because her mom was the one that owned the business, and so when we broke up, uh, she, being my immediate superior, didn't really visit the store that I was at all after that. And so I'm sure that had a negative effect on the business. But then her mom continued to treat me fairly, so I don't know if she didn't know or if she was just looking past what happened, because I got promotions and stuff. But I could see how that could really have gone poorly for me as an employee, choosing to do something like that. And yeah, that's really my experience. So I don't know if that's what you're looking for, but
It sounds kind of messy.
yeah, it wasn't the best. And it doesn't help that my wife knows her, because we all grew up together. So
Does anybody have any similar issues that Devin's talked about? Has anybody seen any kind of really negative impact of dating and breakups in the workplace?
Yeah, I did at my work. Back when I just got home from my mission, I got a job kind of working at like an automotive parts store. And there was this, like, I don't know, like maybe after a year of working there was this girl that was hired to be one of our delivery drivers. And our assistant manager and her, they started dating. And the manager would try to, tell her what she did wrong, or, discipline her, whatever it was. And he would get really, really upset, and he'd almost be really standoffish. And eventually it got to the point that the work environment was just really hostile, because he just wouldn't let anyone, say anything to her or correct her if she was doing anything wrong. Long story short, he ended up having to get transferred because there were just a lot of issues stemming from their relationship. And that's one experience that I've had working that I noticed.
What are some ways that that issue can be addressed, kind of based on what we've learned? Devin, what do you think?
well, I think, like, from a management standpoint, I mean, if there's a problem like in Joseph's situation, you might have to transfer them or something like that. And honestly, I'm not sure. Like, I'm not sure. Other than that, like, if there's like an actual problem.
One thing that I kind of realized is that our HR, there wasn't even supposed to be dating in the workplace. So it was already kind of a violation of human resources for our job. The standard protocol was, if someone was dating, you were to immediately transfer both of them to different stores, so they wouldn't be, able to, so there wouldn't be issues like there was. The only issue with our situation is our manager and assistant manager were really close friends. So they thought they could make it work, but they couldn't. So kind of like Devin said, I think transferring them would probably be the biggest thing, because as human resources and, managers, do we really have, I don't think we have the right to tell people that they can't date, I think that could be like kind of turn into a big issue if you told someone they couldn't date another person. But as long as you have protocol in place that maybe separates them from the workplace, I think that works best.
has anybody ever worked in a place where they had a policy about, dating other people in the business, like saying, okay, you can't. I mean, I've even seen my mom and dad worked for a company that was purchased by another company, and that company had a policy that spouses couldn't work for the same company, so one of them had to be let go. Has anybody had any experience with places that actually say, there's dating, you're not if you date, you're gonna have to go find another job?
That's how it is here at the school for custodial. That's where I work. And if you're engaged, one of you is either transferred or fired. So when my wife and I both worked early mornings, we had to work in separate buildings.
Joseph, you mentioned that you felt like it wasn't fair that people weren't allowed to, get to know each other and date. Do you think it's unfair to have a policy saying that if you start dating someone that you have to be make other arrangements for work?
To a certain point, I think that it's all fair. I don't think that employment should be terminated because someone's been engaged. I always think that there should be an option, kind of like in Devin's situation, where they were just able to work in separate buildings, or kind of like in my situation where they just both got transferred to two completely different stores, on opposite sides of town. But I don't think it's right for human resource management to let someone go or to terminate someone because of their relationship.
Don't you think it's interesting that relationships can cause so many issues in a workplace that it's kind of a policy to separate, divide? I think it's interesting, but kind of that favoritism, that natural kind of inclination to provide and protect or whatever, or to let something slide because they're your significant other or whatever. It's kind of an interesting thing to think about. Anyway, all right. Did anybody have a similar issue that they chose? Did anyone else choose to discuss workplace dating or relationships? If not, that's okay. Just wanted to ask. If not, we can go ahead, and Janie, why don't you share your topic with us? Janie, did you hear me?
I guess I muted me instead of unmuted me, sorry.
That's okay.
I heard on the radio that 50% of people that get married are you marry who you work with.
Oh,
I've been telling my sons, get a job where there's not lots of girls. It can be an issue. So, I don't know, one of the co-workers in my husband's office is going through a divorce, and plus her mother has cancer. So yeah, it's really been a hard thing. And she needs time off to take care of her children, and yeah, it's really a difficult thing. Divorce. So I thought this was interesting, the tips that article gave about how to talk to one of the employees.
What are some of the ones that stood out to you the most? And this is for everybody. I thought it was interesting too, because divorce in the workplace really does, it's not uncommon anymore. I mean,
they want to be friends with both people, the husband and the wife, and I just feel bad for the children.
Yeah, and even then, like when I was a kid, there was only one kid I knew that had divorced parents, and now it's a lot. It impacts a lot more, and so in the workplace, it's not even just if two people there that are divorcing. Even if just the person next to you, the time, the stress, the having to deal with the issues with who picks up the kids and who has the kids and things like that. What are some things that stood out from the reading to you guys?
I thought it was good to be a good listener and not give advice.
Marlia, what were your thoughts on that in the reading?
I thought it was interesting how it said to not become the person that everyone goes to not like jeopardize your productivity in the workplace by having everyone turn to you because you helped one person.
I like that too, where it talked about, because sometimes you don't know what to do. I wouldn't know what to do, where you kind of do, but the kind of the blunt, don't give advice, don't try to fix this. You can listen, and you can try to make basic accommodations, with time if you're a manager, but you're not the therapist, and you don't want to get too deeply involved because it could cause other issues. Any other thoughts on that? What about some policies? What are some policies that, I know that we've discussed a lot of different policies and procedures and hiring and firing and reviews and things like that. What does there need to be some type of policy for issues of, say a person who is recently divorced and needs to get off work every day at 2:30 to pick up kids from school every other week? What are your thoughts, Joseph?
I'm sorry, could you just say that one more time?
When we've talked about policies that need to be put in place for hiring or reviews or things like that, but what if any policy might we need if we have employees who may be recently divorced and need to get off work, say at 2:30 every other week to pick up their kids from school? I mean, does there need to be something in place, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think there should be something in place. Even if it isn't, so like my conscience, like deep down inside is like, I can feel for these people and I understand, their needs. Sometimes there might be a single mom that does need to pick up her child from school or things like that. But one thing that I've noticed in my own work experience is sometimes you have employees that you hire on full time, and then they have, certain events that come up. And it's really hard to cater to those employees when you have so many other employees to cater to. So for instance, we have an employee right now, and it's not, I guess it would kind of be considered a work-home balance, but he just recently started school. So he used to be a full-time employee, and now he says that he can only work until 2 p.m. Well, obviously, we wanted to meet his schedules because we respect that, and we respect that he's going to school. But at the same time, his hours had to get cut because he's on limited hours, but he didn't like his hours getting cut. And also because his hours got cut, because we really needed someone to run a mid shift, we also had to hire someone else. So now there's another full-time employee, and he's kind of disgruntled about it because this news guy is getting full-time and he's only getting, 30 hours a week. So, I mean, I can understand both sides from the business and from the employee. And, I guess I'm going to change my thought. I don't know if there should be any policies, like anything protecting the employees for work and home life balance. I think that, like when I got hired at my job, I obviously had schooling and things that I brought to their attention. I also told them that I couldn't work Sundays. And that's something that I told my manager up front before he hired me. So when I was hired, they already knew kind of what they were getting themselves into. But sometimes when life happens, it's hard to get through it. But I don't think that necessarily there should be anything protecting employees from that. I think that in a sense, there has to be other ways to make it work. Kind of like this employee, his hours got cut, but we're still working around his schedule. I don't know. I'm sure one of you guys could find an argument to that statement, and I'd like you guys to, because I'd like you guys to persuade me, because I really don't know how I feel about the other side of it.
Does anyone agree or disagree or have thoughts on that?
I think it is kind of a slippery slope. Like you said, you feel for these people. You see that their situation is difficult, but it's still the workplace, and you still have to get your job done and stuff like that. So I think cutting his hours, that's a good solution. It's good for the company and for him, even though it wouldn't be as good for him as if he could just leave at 2 or whatever. So I think that both parties need to make some concessions, but yeah.
I was thinking the same thing, Devin, that, I'm kind of, as weird to me that he would be angry that he'd lost some hours, understanding that accommodations need to go both ways. It needs to be in the best interest of both parties. And if it's not, then, find something that works better for, him in another department, or find another job. I was my thought, but I know that there's something in place. My son worked at a plasma center, and he tore a muscle in his shoulder, and could no longer do his job, and he had to have surgery, but he was just getting ready to start a management training program where he would no longer be required the use of that particular arm, but it was going to be about 6 weeks away. And there was I forget what it is, but I think it's a federal something or other. I'm not going to remember, but there's something in place where he could get a percentage of his wage, and they could provide him other opportunities for work at different hours. I forget what it's called, but I know my husband used it when we lived in Washington. There was some family situation where he needed to be able to leave work at any point, at any time in a given day, and without the risk of losing his job. But there was something in place. So I know that, maybe that's one of those situations where you do go to HR and say, what are my options? What's in place already if a life circumstance happens while you're in a workplace? Otherwise, I can really see the value of, like Joseph said, telling people right up front, this is my situation, this is what I need. And if it works for the company, then, it works out front. Does anyone have any other thoughts on that? Did anyone have any other family or divorce type issues that they chose as their topic?
Yeah, I chose one as my topic.
Go ahead.
So this is like a personal experience. When I had gotten home from my mission, my dad, he was getting ready to pass away from cancer, and I hadn't been with the company very long. I think I'd been with the company for maybe 3 or 4 months, and then shortly after that, my dad passed away. And I remember my employer at the time, we were trying to see if I was eligible for the FMLA, the Family Medical Leave Absence. And in the FMLA, it only states that if you're a full-time employee that's worked more than like 1,250 hours for that year or something like that, or throughout your tenure at the company, that's the only way that you're qualified to take FMLA. So I remember my dad passed away, and then the next day I was back at work, and then obviously I was able to take a day off for his funeral. My work did give me a couple of days off after the funeral as well. But I just remember how upset I was at that time, that I had to go into work the next day. And I remember obviously I wasn't very productive, and I just remember how upsetting it was to me that only full-time employees that had worked so many hours for the company were eligible for this benefit. And something that I've thought about often is I think that benefit should be made, the FMLA should be made more open to more employees, to cover whether you're full-time or part-time, because excuse me, I know there's probably a lot of people, especially my age, there's probably a lot of kids that want to work full-time, but because of certain, health insurance and, like different things like that, things in the workplace, a lot of employers won't even work a lot of people full-time anymore, just to kind of dodge the whole health insurance benefactor. So I think that it definitely affected me. Like I said, having to go back the next day and go to work, it obviously affected my performance. And I thought that it was unfair that the FMLA will only cover full-time employees that have worked so many hours. So that was kind of my own take on work and home balance.
That's that program, by the way. FMLA was what my son and my husband both used. So thanks for reminding me. He brings up some pretty important stuff, especially in terms of offering that to part-timers. I know my son wants a full-time job. The place that he works will only work him 28 hours because of insurance. And that's really hard to get a second job to balance out, because the other job wants the 28 hours, and then how to find another job that coordinates hours. So his ability to to work and get what he needs. And then, of course, he doesn't have a family right now. I can't imagine having that and then having to deal with issues where FMLA would come in as something that's helpful. Anyone else have any experience with what Joseph's talked about? Does anyone know if the FMLA is a federal thing? Is that, Joseph, do you know if that's a federal law?
Sorry. Yeah. So it's a law that's been kind of like regulated and been implemented by the U.S. Department of Labor. So with the U.S. Department of Labor, having control and having, basically put that into action, I do believe it's a federal law. I'm not completely sure, but like I said, just because of the fact that the United States Department of Labor is in charge of it and stuff, I think that it is.
Yeah, I just looked it up. It's Family Medical Leave Act of 1993.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, it'll make it interesting to see what comes in the next, 5-10 years because of this issue with insurance and work and time and stuff like that. Because I think you make a really great point about it. I didn't realize it was just full-time only in certain hours and things like that. So thanks for sharing that. That's definitely something we could all look at when looking at work and looking at future planning and policies and different things when we're in a workplace or if we're working in HR to understand kind of what we have to offer to different employees, I suppose. Anybody have any closing thoughts on that? I don't like, well, that's a lie. I like having the last word. That's kind of a sad thing, but I'd love it if someone else had a last word. But I guess I'm stuck having the last word. That's okay. So Marlea, we'll just move on to you and what topic that you chose.
Okay, first of all, sorry if it's loud. They're doing construction in the condo next to me, so I apologize for that. But the topic I chose was drug abuse. And so the situation that I was aware of is my cousin, he got kind of mixed up with the wrong group. And he was working with a company, and at the time he got addicted to Oxy 80 and fentanyl. And if you don't know what fentanyl is, it's a rat poisoning. And he was not in a good place. Half the time he didn't know where he was. He was kind of like he didn't know where he was. He thought he was in La La Land. And the company was actually really good with him, though. The company tried to work through it with him. He got convicted. He had to go to court. He had a jail sentencing type thing and all that, but they were able to keep him out of jail, able to get weaned off these drugs. But in order to do that, they had to re-addict him to another drug to help him with his cravings. But the company that he worked for, they knew that he was a liability, and still they took him on, and they allowed him to go at the same time to the pharmacy to take this other drug in the hands of a care patient or a care person, whatever. Take this drug to help him with his cravings for his other job, to actually have a job. Not that he was at all productive at his job, but it was just interesting to see that they were willing to take him under his wing, even though they knew that some days he might not show up and that he was a liability, but they took care of him, helped out his family a ton too. And on the days when the drugs were so intense that if he missed a pill and he wasn't able to take it, it could kill him. The withdrawals were so intense that it would kill him. And there was times when he would miss a pill and he was not able to go to work, and the bosses didn't call, they didn't bother the family. They knew the situation, and they just simply said, make sure he's here when he can get here. We understand, we want to help. And so that was kind of the situation that I was a part of, being as close to my cousin as I am. If that's exactly the situation that you're looking for, but that's just what really stuck out to me when I was reading over the drug abuse section of the reading this week.
Oh, that's perfect. How long had he worked for the company?
I think he was with them for maybe 2 years, I think about.
I just find that pretty remarkable. Does anybody have any? I mean, that's really remarkable that a company would be that invested in a family and an employee. And you know, what do you think that speaks to the culture of the company and the you know, the other employees? What do you guys think?
I think it was remarkable just from my own point of view because his family being like really active in the church, like the mom, she kind of figured that he was going to die. Like she had been with him, he moved back in with her through all the hard times, and she even got to the point where she in her prayer she was saying to Heavenly Father, like, I understand if you take him, he's your son, you know, like I trust you. And so to see that the company was and took so much stress off of her, I don't know, it was remarkable. It was amazing to be a part of that, to know that someone was willing to maybe not do things the normal way, but to be willing to be different for that family.
Does this change kind of your perspective, anyone, on the role of management and HR in a business, or how? I mean, I think about about Joseph's experience with his father, and now Marlea's experience with her cousin, and the differences between the two, and kind of how that might impact, how might you know, hearing these personal stories and situations might impact how you see your role in the future, and in where you work, or how you manage, or things like that. Anybody want to take that on?
I think, oh, go ahead, Devin.
Oh, sorry. I think with Joseph's situation, I think that they shouldn't have a time limit on how long. If I remember right, there was a time limit on how long he had to be there, and then you could take that. But I think that they should just, you know, allow you to go to something like that, regardless. With Marlea's situation, you know, that company, it's a hard line, because personally, that's how I would want to run things. If I could set it up that way, to have it run like that, and to be very supportive of individuals, that's how I would do it. So we have to see if they can reach out as well, if you're in that company that doesn't allow that maybe would have tried to fire him. You rely on individuals who are good people, and could help somehow, but it would be difficult to change policies if they're already there, to fire someone with so I think in the industries that we work in, we'll have to try and make effective, that can focus on people's lives and their livelihood, but still, you know, increase the earnings of the business. So that's really my thoughts on that.
Joseph, did you have something you wanted to share as well?
Yeah, I was just going to say that one of the reasons, I've been in this business management major now for, obviously a number of years. And one of the reasons I decided to take this HR class is, obviously because I have some interest in HR. And it's mainly because I've learned throughout working, multiple jobs. I don't know if this is how it should be, and my bosses probably wouldn't want to hear this, but I would care way more about my employees than I care about the customers. And like I said, I mean, I know that's probably the wrong mindset to have, and in a lot of workplace environments, but I just really care about the employees. So like even the employee right now that's having issues with school, I would love to work around his schedule a little bit more, but I feel like the one thing that stops us sometimes from being able to do that is just that, we are still a business. Sometimes people may not have the luxury of just, waiting for the storm to blow over, and sometimes they have to hire a replacement. But overall, I mean, I think that, in any future situation, I mean, it definitely gives you a whole new perspective when you think of all these different, stories and personal experiences. It definitely gives you another mindset and a whole new level of understanding. And I think that's something important for, an HR manager to possess, is being able to discern and being able to just be able to understand someone's difficulties that they're going through. Because obviously, I mean, it's a well-known fact that life happens, whether it's, issues with substance abuse, divorce, home balance, dating, whatever it is, life always tends to happen one way or another. And I think it's important for us to kind of be that support and just be understanding to those employees that come to us and trust us with these issues.
Thanks, you guys. I will talk about my topic just briefly, and then we'll move to the conclusion. Mine was a family issue. We have 2 children on the autism spectrum. One is more severe than the other, and we found out when we moved here to Utah about 8 years ago. And the stress and changes that had to happen in life initially, affected, my kind of well-being as a mom, children's well-being, the therapy and things like that kind of all affected my husband in the workplace. His worry for things at home, his need to be there for therapy appointments. And because we didn't really articulate that very well to work, there were some issues up front where, he was taking time off or having to go home, where it would have been really important for him to go in and say, well, we didn't really understand what was going on. We didn't understand really what this meant for our family. So it was everything just kind of got thrown up all in the air, and we were trying to figure out what we were supposed to do and how to do it. And it was a scary time to have our baby not developing properly. And anyway, it took a little while to help work understand what was going on, because it's a brand new job. We just moved here with a new job to help them, understand what we were going through and come to some accommodation that benefited everybody. But it took some time to iron that out. There were some bumps in the road along the way to iron that out, and it's all fine now. But it really took a lot of communication on both sides to understand kind of how my husband, what his needs were, and what work's needs were, and to make sure that everything was met appropriately. And anyway, I could see just from what we've learned the importance of communication and compassion. And I think overall, what I've heard, I keep thinking about, we've talked about all these policies and implementations and written all this stuff on the doohickeys that, it's important to have policies in place. It's important to have, standards in place, but it's also good to understand the spirit of the policies as well. So it makes me think of Joseph, where, it may not be the policy to let you take time off, but it would be compassionate to allow you that time as a company. And it speaks volumes to give that a little bit. And I think in general, people are good, and they don't take advantage. I don't know if that's me and my rose-colored glasses, but those are my thoughts. Does anybody have anything to add to that before we move on, or we can just move on? Okay. The last two questions, and we'll just kind of, I'll go ahead and start, and we'll just go backwards. We'll go Marlea, Joseph, Janie, and end with Devin. What are some issues that you think in society are likely to impact the workplace in the future, and how do you think that changes the workplace in the next 10 years? I think Joseph brought up a really important thing on the MLA, or FMLA, and the impact of the insurance issues in the workplace, where you have people working 28 hours and unable to get the insurance or to have, you know, the benefits of that. And I can see that down the road, if one doesn't change, then it would necessitate FMLA being expanded. And since the government loves to expand things, I can see that happening in the next 10 years. But of course, you know, it's interesting to see with elections and different ways that people perceive the use of government, how much, you know, everything's kind of thrown up in the air from one series of years to another. That, you know, right now I know people are worried about how does the new presidency affect, you know, insurance, or what policies or what things will be put in place that'll change, you know, small business or the workplace environment. You realize how large a role government plays in, you know, kind of establishing those rules, and, you know, everyone kind of takes a pause and says, okay, what's next? What's going to impact my business? And so I would say most likely in the next 10 years that, you know, a shift in kind of the way people govern will definitely change the workplace environment over the next 10 years. And that businesses are always kind of having to tussle with the federal aspect of running their business, and the policies that you know come down from someplace other than your own kind of decisions in your business place. What are your thoughts, Marlea?
Just while you're talking and you said like what are like kind of social, like society's ideas that are going to change the workforce, and the thing that stuck out the most to me was like all of the different issues and kind of things that are going on with gender recently. And I don't know how it is down in the States, but up here in Canada we've had a lot of different problems with like companies needing like gender neutral bathrooms and different rules for gender neutral everything. And I think that the workplace is going to have huge, like it's going to be having huge changes and different setbacks that it didn't expect because of all the media that's coming up and all the promoting it is for that, and how everyone, like, you know, and so I that's what stood out to me, is how society it's really going to impact the workforce just because of that's happening right now, that you can see that like the effects can almost be scary, but you don't know where they're going to lead and how much of an effect they're going to have on your company.
Thanks, Marlea. What are your thoughts, Joseph?
So, you know, obviously I agree that, you know, as time goes on, I think things will change. And I think that a lot of times, you know, like I said, I think things will change and it will work out better for a lot of the employees, whether they're full-time or part-time. I think that a lot of them should be able to receive some sort of benefits, regardless of your hours. You're still a human being and you still have issues that come up, and I think that, you know, you should be able to be treated as such. One thing that's come to my mind a little bit with drugs and substance abuse, excuse me, is obviously here, you know, in the States, there's a lot of states that are passing, you know, laws and bills for recreational marijuana. And one thing that I think about is my last two employers, I've had to take drug tests at each of them to make sure that I was not doing any drugs. And now obviously there's a, you know, and that included marijuana, you know, at the time when I did my drug test. And now you have states where it's legal to, you know, to use recreational marijuana. And I'm just kind of wondering how that's going to affect the workforce, because even though it's legal in some states, I know my employer still will not hire you if you test positive for using marijuana. So, I mean, I think that's going to be a real tricky situation. Also, here is just, you know, a drug-free workplace. And I don't know, I just think that'll be interesting to see unfold within the next, within the future years.
Thanks, Joseph. Janie?
I think depression is becoming a big problem. And I was surprised in even my young women's class how many deal with that. And the medication they have to take, and it's not really illegal, but I can see how certain coworkers are like confused because of the medication they're taking, and they make more mistakes and get more irritable. And there was a diet drug, I think it was called Fen-Phen, that several of my husband's employees were taking, that really caused them to be confused and irritable. And then they found that causes problems to your heart, so they quit taking it. But I think some medications that are needed are hard on in the workplace, dealing with people that have sort of those problems and need to take those kind of medicines.
Thanks, Janie. Go ahead, Devin.
It's been mentioned before, but just the whole health insurance aspect, definitely things have changed, and people are consolidating hours. They don't have to, and numbers of employees, so they don't have to pay for health insurance. And then it also just depends on what aspect of what industry you work in. If you work in health, then you might see layoffs with expansion of Medicaid. Doctors have to work more for less money. And so you can see layoffs, and it just has been a problem, and I think will always continue to be a problem, seeing what Trump will do. I don't know how much he can change it or how much he's actually going to change it, but that's going to be a big problem in the future years to come.
Thanks. I was listening to all of you, and having gone through the class. Oh, hold on just one moment. Hold on a moment.
Yep, that's what they were saying, so we'll see. That's kind of funny because I called a friend who I thought might have a litter.
You guys still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. My other meeting is starting to go live, so they were just talking, so sorry about that. I'll wrap this up. I was just thinking that there was a lot more to HR than I realized. I really, kind of agree with Brother Stanley's, like, they're the hire fire people. They're the people that you have to go to. They're like the principal's office or whatever, but there's a lot more that goes into it, and a lot of dynamic kind of situations in business that have to be thought about. It's been a valuable class. I appreciate you guys as a group. I've learned a lot personally. I've learned a lot professionally, and so thanks for being a great group of people to work with, and I don't know if you guys have any other closing thoughts, but thank you for what I've learned from the semester from all of you. Outside of that, I think we're good to go, and so we'll try to review the doohickeys between 12 and 4 on Friday, so that Joseph can turn it in. And anyway, thanks for a great meeting.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.